Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Product. Tonight, I'm super excited to spend the evening with Kris Davis. He's a principal UX designer. Hey, welcome, Kris.
Cool, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Did you want to do a quick intro for yourself? Did you have anything that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so about myself, I have a little bit of an interesting path from design and into product management and back in design. My experience is probably a little different from some. So hopefully I can share it from a different perspective.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to you because of your different experience. I have a retail background, and so
Hmm.
it's always cool to talk to people that have a kind of an unconventional path into product leadership and tech. So
Hmm.
um, the target of this podcast is really for aspiring or new PMs or product owners or just product leaders to really understand, what the role is. So how would you define product management or product leadership?
So I would define the function of product in a tech team is really being laser focused on providing value to customers. And so that's really understanding from the business perspective what the value is going to be placed on the things that the development team is going to be building, so that the things that development teams build um, help the business sustain or grow or transform. And so for me, that's really kind of the key thing for product is understanding value. What are the things that people are going to buy? How excited are people going to be to pay for your service or your product? And being able to keep a pulse of where the customers are always at with that.
Nice. Yeah, and with your design background, how has that influenced
Hmm.
that for you?
So it's a good question. So for me, my when I first started in design, I was working at a lot of startups, and in the startups, it was me and engineers. And so for a while, I spent a lot of my time talking to end users and just building things that end users wanted. But I really felt like there was an overall lack, because there was a lack of a product role. I felt like there was a lack of understanding around what's going to move the needle from a business perspective on the activities that we were engaging in and the things that we were building. So for me, you know, I when I got more into product management, it really started from a perspective of me having an awareness that there was a lack of information to make these decisions, and we were making them off of what was going to be good for users and what was able to be built, but not really what was going to focus on providing value to the business. So
Nice. So tell me a little
yeah.
bit about your background. How did you get into product management?
Yeah, so when I was working in the startups that were lacking that role, it was a role that I sort of just took on because it needed to get filled, and I was interested. And I was learning a lot about UX and research methodologies and the things that it took to build usable interfaces, and was also interested in understanding more of the business perspective of what's going to provide customer value. So I started kind of teaching myself what the role was about and how to get to that information. And then I applied for a design role at a startup in the practice management and healthcare space. And during my interview process, the VP of product at the time uh, called me after the interview and basically said, you had some really interesting answers to some of the questions that I asked. I'd like to hire you as a product manager instead of a designer. And so, I'm a big fan of saying yes to everything. And so I said, yeah, this is a good learning opportunity. So um, after uh, after I was in that role, I started really wanting to learn more about the business side of things, having gone to an art school and been doing design work, really felt like that was a gap in my capability. And so I went to grad school in a product management focused degree, and learned everything I wanted to. So
Nice. You're one of the first people I've talked to with the startup background. I'd be really curious to dive into, you know, what it's like as a PM in a startup environment. I
mhm.
would guess there's probably not a lot of well-defined processes and functions within the team. And like, do you kind of wear every hat as a PM in a startup?
um, so that's a good question. I mean, there's the cop out answer here, which it kind of depends on the startup and the
Yeah.
team and level of maturity. I would say um, maybe.
Okay.
Um, you know, as the companies get bigger, skills, the generalists kind of are less necessary, and you need more specialists. So in small companies, as a product manager, they might be also fulfilling a scrum master role or a project manager role.
Yeah.
They might even be doing wireframes or hands-on coding.
Okay.
But certainly when you get into enterprise spaces where the business can support more specialization, that's sort of when the product managers get siloed and the project managers get siloed, and the design teams start to get siloed into UX and visual design, and you get all
Yeah.
kinds of engineers. So that's kind of where I see the scale of responsibility changing.
Awesome. Then you also have some experience at General Assembly. What did you do there?
So I spent some time at General Assembly teaching their intro to product management class in the evenings. And the goal of that class was to really help people who were interested in product management, but maybe didn't have enough information to understand if they really wanted to dive into it. And so my role there was really to put together curriculum at a high level of what product management is, what are the roles and responsibilities for people who are product managers, how do they fit into a product development team, and then if they wanted to learn more, they could uh, sign up for the intensive product management class, which was
Nice.
a longer program, bigger price tag.
Yeah. What were some of the most common questions that you would kind of get from the new attendees? Is there any common questions that a lot of people would come in with?
Yeah, so a lot of people would come in with the question of how do I get into product management. So I would say that was the first one, and then a lot of people, um, we're just kind of understanding if product management was the same from company to company, how does it differ, and the like. So,
Yeah.
for those were definitely the overwhelming amount of questions were in those two camps. How do I
Yeah.
get in, and is it always the same?
Yeah. That first one, obviously, I think that's one of the questions that I kind of touch on. But that second one,
Yeah.
is it always the same? That's a really good point because even in large organizations, I've kind of felt like it even varies from department to department.
hmm
The product manager role. How would you answer that question for someone that's aspiring to get into product management?
So um, I would answer that question in a couple of different ways. The first is being obviously yes, it's different from company to company. People are different, companies are different, teams are different. So the roles, so there's a lot of aspects of the roles that do change. The aspect of the role um, that from a philosophical level, I would say should not change is that keen eye towards providing value to customers that they're willing to pay for, that the business can monetize. So if you're not looking at that in any sort of organization, even though you might have a product management and a project manager hat on, or you might even do some coding, or you might have to do program management in addition to product management. You might have all these peripheral things that change, but the core of what a product management should be, or a product manager should be doing is defining value and prioritizing that for the team. So that's how I would characterize the things that change and the thing that shouldn't change,
Yeah.
for that question. And I would say too, for me, why that question is being asked is also very interesting.
Yeah.
If the question's being asked because it's coming from somebody who wants stability and wants the same thing everywhere they go, then I would say that a product management role is probably not for them, because it's not a cookie cutter job, and it does change, and you have to have a personality that's not just going to put up and embrace change, but really lean into it and drive change. So those were interesting conversations to really ask, like, where is this question coming from? Are you curious because you want to make sure that your skill set is transferable, or are you curious because you don't want to get into an environment that's going to change?
That's a really good insight. I'm sure you've had some really interesting conversations around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see here. So what advice would you share with an aspiring PM, or maybe someone that's new to the product management role?
Somebody that's new to the product management role, this is going to be general advice to anybody that's probably new to any role. But I think mentors are really important. I think it's important to find somebody who has more experience than you, but also has a philosophical alignment with where you're looking to grow, that can help provide outside perspectives on things that are happening within your career. So I think finding a mentor is absolutely key. And I also think that when you're in the process of searching for jobs, really putting yourself out there and networking, I think is the absolutely far and above best way that you can put yourself in a position to find a job. Anybody wanting to get into any career in tech, sitting behind a screen by yourself, submitting hundreds of applications, it's going to be a really painful process, and you're probably not going to get to where you need to go, because you'll most likely find yourself at a point in time where you just need to get a job. And anybody that comes along with a first job that gets the title you want, even though it's not great for your career, or it's not a good culture fit, or not with the product you're passionate about, you're going to start to be squeezed until you have to just take whatever comes your way. Whereas if you hit the ground, and it's a little harder to do during COVID times, but take people out for coffee, get to know them, learn about what they do at their company and what their company does. And it's all about making the people connections. That's the stuff that's gonna get you connected and help you find a role that you're gonna align with.
Yeah, that sounds so basic and simple, but me getting new to a PM role, it never dawned on me, right? I had a really hard time in the beginning when I was searching, finding like a mentor or networking online, because it's really easy to get stuck in your niche or your industry, and not really find the PMs. And that's why I'm so glad you said that. I would just encourage people. I mean, you do a great job on LinkedIn. I just encourage people to reach out and find people on LinkedIn. And what's super fascinating to me is this product managers, like the entire community, just seems to welcome aspiring PMs with like open arms.
Yeah, totally.
And because I think a lot of us have different backgrounds and different challenges that we went through, and so we kind of feel where they're coming from. And it's a very welcoming community.
Yeah.
For the mentor piece, I'd be curious. Do you tell me about your experience finding mentors? How would you recommend that someone goes about finding a mentor?
So that's a good question, and I think it's not easy to do. For me, I happened to stumble upon and luck out for people that I found that were good mentors. one of the things that if I were starting over again today, one of the things that I would do is really engage online communities and find people who are active in online communities who um, are willing to, develop a relationship around mentorship and guidance. There are a lot of people who have a loud voice online, and some of those people are trolls, and then there are other of those people who really do it because they care about a community and about growing knowledge. And so it's been my experience that a lot of the people who show up active on a community with a very like a very good perspective on things, they're generally very willing to have more conversations and help people. But it also does take on the part of the mentee a little bit of vulnerability. Like, you've got to reach out there and say, like, hey, I need some help. Are you willing to chat with me about X, Y, and Z? And so, that's also not an easy thing to do, especially, if it's somebody you don't know super well. But if you reach out to somebody and they say no, then they probably weren't the right type of fit for your mentor anyways.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And you know, just going back to like the networking piece, you can tell a lot by the people that post on social. There's like two groups of people: like people that post on social media to try to like feels like build their brand, and so they're just like
yeah.
posting consistently. But then you've got
Mhm.
another one, and you mentioned community a lot, that are really trying to build and serve the community. And I think you can just tell by people that respond to the comments, right? If someone posts
Totally.
something on like LinkedIn and then they're responding and active in the comments, to me that feels like they're really genuinely trying to go a layer deeper and
Yeah.
add value. So
Yeah. 100%. And those are definitely the people who I think are coming from a place of passion
yeah,
and really wanting to help be of service. And those are great individuals to reach out to.
absolutely. Any book recommendations that you have maybe for a new PM or for any PM?
Yeah. So there's an author that I've been reading for a while called Marty Kagan. And gosh, uh, maybe 10 years ago, he released a first book called Inspired. And he recently released another book called Empowered. And I haven't read it yet, but I'm dying to read it. I just, with two kids and being stuck at home during COVID times, I haven't had time to do as much reading as I'd like. But I love his perspective on product management. It's a very refreshing modern perspective on product management that's um, that I think is definitely the way to go.
Nice. I will order that one
So
tonight. I've listened to Inspired. I have it on Audible. But I will
okay.
definitely I'm gonna get I used to do that when I would drive a lot pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But now that I sit down with a book and I like to highlight and all that fun stuff. So I will go buy Empowered on Amazon tonight and check it out.
Yeah, and he's a great speaker too. So that he's got a ton of YouTube videos online. He's got a YouTube video about how roadmaps kill products. And
I would agree with that.
he's yeah. I and it's a lot of stuff that has kind of become entrenched in a lot of product development organizations. Is we build this PRD, and then we throw this over the fence, and then things get designed, and then that gets thrown over the fence to engineers, and it's very very waterfall and more focused on output than it is on creating value. And Marty Kagan's approach is awesome, and I love that he's willing to kind of call out some of those um, ancient artifacts of product development and shed some new light on them. So all
I
good stuff.
love I love that you say that, because I was literally just talking about that today with someone, because it's so easy to get stuck in the cycle of, oh, we're getting stories done. Oh, the output's good. Oh, the output's
Hmm.
good. But are you really adding the value that needs to be added for the business, for the customer, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm gonna go. Let me try to get Marty Kagan on the podcast and see if we can make that
Oh
happen.
man. Yeah. You should try to do that. It's probably pretty expensive these days, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I don't know.
Let's
Yeah,
see if he
he
wants
would
to
be
add
a
a little bit.
fantastic
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna get to work there tonight. Well, any questions I didn't ask? Anything you wanted to share that I forgot to ask?
Um, no, I mean, if there if anybody that's listening wants to get a hold of me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and that's the best way. And you know, I'm happy to help. My bias these days is definitely more on the design side of things, but you know, I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife that way. So can definitely help plug people into companies and find roles and talk about stuff. So
That's awesome, Kris. Well, thank you so much for taking your time out of your evening
yeah,
to spend
absolutely.
here with me.
Cool. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate the conversation.
Likewise.